The wind swept through the quiet streets of Eldon Hollow, carrying a chill that sank into the bones of its people. The hamlet, a small collection of stone houses with worn roofs, nestled in a valley surrounded by thick woods. For 100 years, the villagers had lived under a dark shadow. Each year, a monstrous fiend emerged from the forest, its glowing eyes piercing the night, demanding 10 young girls as tribute. The custom had started long before anyone alive could remember, passed down as a grim duty. Families hid their daughters, but the fiend always found them, leaving empty homes and tears in its wake. Erwin Vale stood at the edge of the village square, her brown hair tied back, her green eyes hard with resolve. At 23, she had seen too much, 5 girls taken in her lifetime, including friends she'd grown up with. Her younger brother, Miran, stood beside her, his small frame shaking. At 12, he was the last of her family their parents lost to sickness years ago. "We can't keep giving them up," Erwin said, her voice steady. "This year, it's my turn to be taken, and I won't let it happen." Elder Thrain, a bent man with gray hair and a lined face, leaned on his staff. He shook his head slowly. "It's the way it's always been, Erwin. We give the fiend what it wants, and it leaves us alone. The city won't help, and fighting it has never worked." Miraine clutched her arm. "What if it takes you, Erwin? I can't lose you, too." She knelt, meeting his eyes. "I won't let it. We need to find another way. There's a story about a man who lives in the woods, stronger than any beast." Thrain frowned. "You mean the vampire? Lord Cale Draven? That's just a tale to scare children." "He's not real. Maybe he is," Erwin shot back. "Old Marta told me her grandmother saw him once, a figure with white hair and red eyes, living in a ruined keep. If he's real, he might stop the fiend." The village had whispered about Cale for generations. Some said he was a ghost, others a demon who fed on blood. But the stories also claimed he had power over dark things, and 100 years ago, he'd fought something similar. Erwin clung to that hope. She gathered a small group, Thrain, Mirian, and 2 others, Jorik and Tilda, to search for him. The elders argued, but the loss of another 10 girls this year had pushed even the weakest to act. The next morning, under a gray sky, they set out. The forest loomed ahead, its trees twisted and bare, their branches scratching the air. The path was faint, marked by old tracks and broken branches. Erwin led, a simple knife at her side, her eyes watching for danger. Thrain muttered prayers under his breath, while Miraine stayed close, his breath visible in the cold. The journey was long, the silence broken only by the crunch of leaves and the occasional rustle of wildlife. As the day faded, mist rolled in, thick and cold. Through it, they spotted Duskspire Keep, a tall, broken structure of stone with high walls and empty towers. Vines clung to its sides, and a faint light pulsed from within, like a heartbeat. "Is that it?" Tilda asked, her hand tight on her axe. Erwin nodded. "It has to be." "Let's go." They reached the heavy wooden door, its surface carved with strange marks that glowed softly. Erwin knocked, the sound echoing inside. For a long moment, there was no answer. Then the door creaked open, revealing a tall man. His white hair was tied back, his face sharp yet noble, and his eyes glowed a deep red. He wore a dark coat over a strong build, his presence filling the space. This was Lord Cale Draven. "Who comes to my door?" His voice was deep, carrying a weight that made them step back. Erwin stepped forward, her heart racing but her chin up. "I'm Erwin Vale from Eldon Hollow. We need your help. A fiend has taken our girls for 100 years, 10 each year, and we can't stop it." Cale's eyes narrowed. "A vampire does not meddle in human troubles. Go back to your village." Thrain raised a shaky hand. "Please, my lord. We've lost so many. We offer what we have. Food, tools, anything you need." Kyle's lips curled into a cold smile. "I have no use for your gifts. My time of helping your kind is over." Erwin felt a knot in her chest, but she wouldn't back down. "Then help us for your own sake." That fiend threatens the woods, your home. If it grows stronger, it might turn on you. He tilted his head, studying her with those red eyes. You speak boldly for a mortal. But why should I care about your losses? Because you're not the monster they say, she pressed. The stories call you a killer, but you're here, alive. You must have a reason to stay. Help us end this, and we'll owe you, every one of us. Cale's gaze lingered on her, then drifted to the forest. I felt its presence. A foul thing, demanding tribute. Tell me more. Erwin explained the fiend's pattern, its yearly return, its glowing eyes, the way it took the girls and left nothing behind. Moraine added, his voice small. This year, they picked my sister. I don't want her to go, Cale's face tightened. A century of this. It's no random beast. It may be bound by an old curse, one I once knew. Come inside. We'll speak. They followed him into a large hall, its walls lined with dusty books and flickering torches. A table held maps and odd items. Cal motioned for them to sit, though he stayed standing. Tell me all you know, he said, every detail. They talked for hours, recounting the fiend's visits. Thrain spoke of an old story, a warrior who sealed a creature long ago, suggesting the fiend might be its return. Cale listened, his white hair catching the light, his red eyes deep in thought. When did it start? He asked. 100 years ago, Thrain said, after a great battle in these woods. Cal nodded slowly. I remember that fight. I thought I'd ended it. If it's back. The curse wasn't broken. I'll need to see the village. The places it strikes, Erwin's hope grew. You'll help us? Not for free, Cale said. If I do this, you'll swear an oath. Protection for my keep. Aid, if I call. Agreed? They exchanged looks, then nodded. Agreed, Erwin said. Cale led them back through the forest that night, his steps silent despite the rough ground. The villagers followed, their torches casting long shadows. When they reached Eldon Hollow, the air felt heavier, the fiend's presence close. Cale stood in the square, his white hair glowing faintly under the moon, his red eyes scanning the dark. Tomorrow, he said, we hunt it. Rest now. The villagers returned to their homes, a mix of fear and hope in their hearts. Erwin stayed with Cale, showing him the marks left by the fiend. Deep scratches on a barn wall, a broken fence. He traced them with his fingers, his face grim. It's stronger than before, he muttered, but I've faced worse. Erwin watched him, wondering what battles he'd seen. Why did you agree? She asked. He turned, his red eyes meeting hers. A curse like this harms more than humans. It taints the land, and I've grown tired of its weight. Plus, he paused, your courage reminds me of someone I lost. She didn't press, but his words stayed with her. That night, as the village slept, Cal prepared. He sharpened a long blade and gathered a pouch of strange herbs, muttering words that sounded like a spell. Morning came with a gray sky. The villagers gathered, watching as Cale led Erwin and a few others into the woods. The fiend's lair was near, a cave hidden by thick vines. Its roars shook the ground as they approached. Cal raised a hand. Stay back. I'll draw it out. He stepped forward, his white hair catching the light, his coat flowing. The fiend emerged, a massive shape with glowing eyes and jagged claws. It lunged, but Cale moved fast, dodging its strike. He slashed with his blade, drawing blood, but the beast roared and charged again. Erwin watched, her heart in her throat. The fight went on, Cale's strength holding against the fiend's fury. Then, with a final thrust, he drove his blade into its chest. The creature let out a scream, its body collapsing into dust. The woods grew quiet. Cale turned, his white hair streaked with dirt, his red eyes tired but steady. It's done, he said. The villagers cheered, rushing to thank him. Erwin approached, her eyes shining. You saved us. Cale nodded. The curse is broken, but oaths remain. We're tied now, she smiled. Then let's build something better. As they walked back, the hamlet breathed easier, but a new chapter loomed, a bond with the vampire that might change their fate. The dust of the fallen fiend settled over the forest floor. and a strange calm washed over Eldon Hollow as the villagers returned to the hamlet. The air felt lighter, as if the century-old weight had truly lifted with the beast's defeat. Erwin walked beside Cale Draven, her steps steady despite the exhaustion that pulled at her. The villagers trailed behind, their voices a mix of relief and awe, carrying tales of the white-haired vampire who had ended their nightmare. Moraine clung to her hand, his eyes wide with wonder as he glanced at Cale. The square, where they had gathered just hours before in fear, now buzzed with a cautious hope. Women peeked from their windows, men clapped each other on the back, and children dared to play near the edges of the village. Elder Thrain approached Cale, his staff tapping the ground, his face softened by gratitude. "You've given us back our lives, my lord," Thrain said, bowing his head. "We'll honor our oath. Whatever you need, it's yours." Cal nodded, his red eyes scanning the crowd. "The oath stands, protection for my keep, aid when I call. But know this, the fiend's death may stir other shadows. Curses like that don't fade quietly." Erwin frowned, her mind racing. "What do you mean? Is something else coming?" Cale's gaze turned to the forest, where the cave's dark mouth still loomed. The fiend was bound by magic, old and deep. Its end might wake those who cast the spell, or others who fed on its power. We'll need to watch. She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The village had survived, but the peace might be short-lived. She turned to the crowd. "Let's clean up, rebuild what's broken. We'll be ready if trouble comes." The day passed in a blur of activity. Jorik and Tilda led efforts to repair the barn, its walls scarred by the fiend's claws. Women gathered food and water, while children helped carry wood. Erwin worked alongside them, her hands busy but her thoughts on Cale. He had stayed near the square, his white hair catching the fading light, his presence a quiet strength. She wondered about his past, the someone he'd lost, but held her questions for now. As night fell, the village held a small feast, simple bread, cheese, and a bit of saved wine. Torches lit the square, casting long shadows. Cale joined them, sitting apart but accepting a cup from Thrain. The elder raised it high. "To Lord Cale Draven, our savior." The villagers echoed the toast, their voices warm. Erwin sat near Cale, her brother on her other side. "Why did you help us?" she asked quietly. "You could have turned us away." Cale took a sip, his red eyes meeting hers. "I've lived alone too long. The fiend's curse touched the land I claim, and your fight reminded me of battles I once fought. Plus," he paused, a faint smile crossing his lips, "your spirit is hard to ignore." Moraine leaned forward. "Are you really a vampire?" "Do you drink blood?" Kyle chuckled, a rare sound. "Yes, I am. But I take only what's offered, or from those who harm others. I'm not the monster your tales might say." Erwin smiled, feeling a bond growing. "Then stay with us a while. Teach us to protect ourselves." He considered it, then nodded. "For a time. But I'll need a place to rest by day." Thrain offered a small house on the edge of the village, its windows easy to cover. Cal agreed, and the next morning he moved in, bringing a few items from Duskspire Keep, a chest of books, a sword, and a pouch of herbs. The villagers watched from a distance, curious but wary. Days turned to weeks. Cal trained Erwin and a few others, Jorik, Tilda, and young Moraine, in basic defense. He showed them how to spot signs of danger, how to use knives and stakes. His white hair gleamed in the sun's weak rays, his movements swift and sure. Erwin learned quickly, her courage growing with each lesson. One evening, as they practiced near the forest, Moraine pointed to the trees. "Look, those marks weren't there yesterday." Cale examined the fresh claw marks on a trunk, deeper than the fiend's had been. "Something's out there," he said, his voice low. "Not the same beast, but close." Erwin's stomach tightened. "Another fiend?" "Possibly," Cale replied, "or a servant of the curse." "We need to investigate." They gathered torches and weapons, a small group venturing into the woods. The air grew thick, the mist returning. Kyle led, his red eyes cutting through the dark. They reached the cave, its entrance wider now, as if something had forced its way out. Inside, they found bones, human, but older than the recent victims, and a strange stone glowing with a faint light. "This is the source," Kel said, picking it up, a binding stone. The fiend was its guardian. Its death broke the seal. Before they could react, a roar shook the cave. A new creature emerged, smaller than the fiend, but faster, with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. It lunged at Miraine, but Kale moved like a shadow, shoving the boy aside and slashing with his sword. The beast dodged, striking Kale's arm, drawing blood. Erwin rushed forward, her knife in hand. "Get back!" she shouted to Miraine. She stabbed at the creature, missing, but forcing it to turn. Kyle recovered, his white hair streaked with dirt, and drove his blade into its side. It let out a shriek, collapsing in a heap. Breathing hard, Kale examined the stone. This must be destroyed. It's calling more. They returned to the village, the stone wrapped in cloth. Thrain called a meeting, and Kale explained the danger. "The curse isn't over. We need to break this stone, but it'll take magic I don't have alone." Erwin stepped up. "Then we'll find someone who can." "I'll go with you." Cal looked at her, a mix of respect and concern in his eyes. "It's a long journey." "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said, "for Eldon Hollow." The village agreed to hold the fort, and the next day Erwin and Kel set out, the stone in a bag, their bond strengthening with each step. The forest stretched ahead, and with it a new fight loomed. The forest swallowed Erwin and Kel as they ventured deeper, the trees closing in like silent watchers. The binding stone, wrapped tightly in cloth, hung heavy in the bag slung over Kel's shoulder. Its faint glow pulsed through the fabric, a reminder of the danger they carried. Erwin walked close beside him, her knife ready, her green eyes scanning the shadows. The air grew colder, the mist thicker, as if the land itself resisted their mission. Kel moved with a quiet grace, his white hair catching the dim light filtering through the canopy. His red eyes remained sharp, alert for any sign of trouble. "We're heading to the stone circle," he said, breaking the silence. "It's a place of old magic where a witch might help us. I've heard of one, Leora, who lives there. She owes me a favor." Erwin nodded, her breath visible in the chill. "How far is it?" "2 days, if the path holds," he replied. "We'll need to move fast." That stone's power is growing. The first night, they camped under a rocky overhang, the fire small to avoid drawing attention. Kyle sat apart, his coat pulled tight, while Erwin tended the flames. She watched him, noting the way his white hair fell slightly over his face, the lines of worry etched into his rugged features. "You said someone you lost," she ventured. "Was it like me?" Kale's red eyes met hers, and for a moment he seemed far away. "Her name was Celine. A village girl, like you, brave, stubborn. I tried to save her from a curse, but it took her instead. I've avoided humans since Erwin felt a pang of sympathy." "I'm sorry, but you helped us. That's not avoiding." He gave a small smile. "Maybe you're changing that." The next day they pressed on, the forest growing wilder. Twisted roots tripped their feet, and strange noises echoed, snaps of branches, distant growls. By midday, they reached a river, its waters dark and fast. Kyle spotted a fallen log serving as a bridge and tested it with his weight. "Careful," he said, offering his hand. Erwin took it, her grip firm as she crossed. Halfway, the log shifted, and she slipped. Cal caught her, his strength steadying her. For a moment, they stood close, his red eyes locking with hers. "Thanks," she murmured, stepping back. They continued, reaching the stone circle by dusk, a ring of tall, weathered stones, glowing faintly with runes. In the center stood a woman, her gray hair braided, her eyes a piercing blue. This was Leora. "You've brought trouble," she said, her voice rough. "I feel that stone." Kel stepped forward. "Leora, it's a binding stone from a broken curse. The fiend it held is dead, but this is waking more. We need it destroyed. Leora studied the stone, her fingers tracing its glow. It's old magic, tied to a dark pact. Destroying it will free whatever's left, but it'll fight back. I can do it, but you'll owe me name your price, Kale said. Protection for my circle if the shadows come, she replied, and your blood, vampire blood, to fuel the spell. Kale nodded. Agreed. Leora prepared a fire, placing the stone in its center. She chanted, her voice rising as she cut Kale's arm, letting his blood drip into the flames. The stone pulsed violently, and the air grew thick. Erwin stood ready, her knife drawn. A shape formed from the smoke, a shadowy version of the fiend, its eyes glowing. It lunged at Leora, but Kale intercepted, his blade flashing. Erwin joined, stabbing at its legs. The creature roared, its claws raking Kale's side. He grunted, but held firm, driving his sword through its chest. Leora's chant peaked, and the stone shattered, the shadow dissolving with a scream. The fire died, leaving silence. Kale slumped, blood seeping from his wounds, but he waved off help. It's done, he rasped. Leora bandaged him, her expression grim. The curse is broken, but echoes remain. Watch your Hamlet. They rested there, Erwin tending Kale as he healed. The next day they started back, the forest quieter now. Reaching Eldon Hollow, they found the village tense, new claw marks on houses, whispers of movement in the woods. It's not over, Erwin said. Kale's red eyes darkened. No, but we'll face it together. They rallied the village, training harder. Weeks later, a new beast attacked, a larger fiend, its eyes burning. Kale led the fight, his white hair wild, his strength unmatched. Erwin and the villagers flanked it, using traps and blades. Kale found a weak spot, driving his sword deep. The beast fell, its dust scattering. The hamlet cheered, but Kale's gaze stayed on the forest. This was the last, he said. The curse is gone. Erwin smiled, her hand on his arm. You're one of us now. He nodded, his white hair gleaming under the moon. And you're my strength. The village rebuilt, their bond with Kale a new foundation, but in the quiet, both knew shadows might return. As the weeks passed, Eldon Hollow began to heal. New roofs replaced the old, and laughter returned to the streets. Erwin led the efforts, her green eyes bright with purpose, while Myran helped carry wood, his small frame growing stronger. Kyle stayed close, his white hair a familiar sight as he trained the villagers in defense, his red eyes watchful. The memory of the fiend faded, but a tension lingered, a whisper in the wind that spoke of unfinished business. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a stranger arrived. He was tall and lean, his black hair slicked back, his eyes a cold yellow that gleamed in the torchlight. He wore a dark cloak adorned with silver runes, and behind him stood 5 others, their pale faces marked with similar symbols. The villagers froze, sensing danger. Erwin stepped forward, Kale at her side, his hand resting on his sword. Who are you? Erwin demanded, her voice steady. The stranger smiled, revealing sharp fangs. I am Lord Varys of the Crimson Vale. We've come for Lord Kale Draven. He's disrupted our plans, and we claim this land. Kale's eyes narrowed. The Crimson Vale. I thought your kind stayed in the northern wastes. What business do you have here? Varys laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The fiend's curse was ours to control. Its tribute fed our power. You broke that, and now we take what's left. Your keep, your village, your blood. Erwin's heart sank. The fiend had been a tool of this rival vampire faction, its demands part of their scheme. She glanced at Kale, seeing the anger in his red eyes. You used our girls for your gain? She said, her voice rising. Varys shrugged. A small price for strength. But no matter. We'll start anew here. Kyle stepped forward, his white hair catching the last light. You won't touch them. Leave or face me. The Crimson Vale drew weapons, swords and daggers, glinting with a strange sheen. Varys signaled, and his followers spread out, circling the square. The villagers grabbed pitchforks and knives, forming a tight group behind Erwin and Cale. Tension hung heavy, the air crackling with threat. "You're outnumbered, Draven," Varys sneered. "Join us, or die!" "I'd rather die," Cale replied, drawing his blade. The fight erupted. Varys lunged at Cale, their swords clashing with a sharp ring. Erwin ducked a swipe from one of the followers, stabbing with her knife. The vampire hissed, retreating, but another took its place. Mirren stayed back, his eyes wide, while Jorek and Tilda fought beside Erwin, their axes swinging. Cale moved like a storm, his white hair flying as he parried Varys' strikes. The rival vampire was fast, his yellow eyes glowing with fury, but Cale's strength held. He landed a cut on Varys' arm, drawing black blood. Varys snarled, calling for his group to close in. Erwin spotted an opening. She grabbed a torch from the ground, thrusting it at a vampire's face. The creature shrieked, its skin blistering, and fell back. Tilda followed, her axe splitting another's shoulder. The villagers' courage grew, their numbers pushing the enemy. But Varys was relentless. He overpowered Cale, pinning him against a wall, his blade at Cale's throat. "This ends now," Varys hissed. Erwin acted fast. She threw her knife, striking Varys' hand. He yelped, dropping his sword, and Cale broke free. With a swift move, Cale drove his blade through Varys' chest. The vampire gasped, his yellow eyes fading and crumbled to dust. His followers, seeing their leader fall, fled into the night. The square fell silent, the villagers breathing hard. Cale wiped his sword, his white hair streaked with dirt, his red eyes tired but firm. Erwin rushed to him, her hands checking for wounds. "Are you hurt?" "Just scratches," he said, managing a weak smile. "You saved me." She nodded, relief flooding her. "They won't stop, will they?" Cale looked toward the forest, where the Crimson Veil had vanished. "No, they'll regroup. The Veil is large, and they'll want revenge. We need to prepare." Thrain joined them, his face pale. "What do we do, my lord?" "Fortify the village," Cale said. "Build walls, train more fighters. I'll teach you to guard against vampires. And," he paused, meeting Erwin's eyes, "we might need allies." The next days were busy. The villagers worked together, raising a wooden fence around Eldon Hollow. Cal showed them how to use garlic and silver, weak points for his kind. Erwin took charge, her leadership growing, while Miraen helped carry supplies, his fear turning to determination. One night, Cale called a meeting in the square. "The Crimson Veil will return," he said. "They're a faction that thrives on control, using curses and fear. We broke their hold here, but they won't forget. I know of a rival group, the Silver Dawn, who might help. They oppose the Veil's ways." Erwin frowned. "More vampires. Can we trust them?" "Some," Cale replied. "I've dealt with their leader, Lady Sorin. She's honorable but cautious. I'll go to her, but I need you to hold the village." "I'll come with you," Erwin insisted. "You need someone to watch your back." Cale hesitated, then nodded. "Very well." We leave at dawn. The journey took them north, through rugged hills and icy streams. Cale's wounds healed, his white hair a stark contrast to the gray landscape. They reached a stone hall, its entrance guarded by pale figures with silver marks. Lady Sorin, a tall woman with black hair and calm gray eyes, greeted them. "Cale Draven," she said, "you've stirred the Veil's wrath." "What do you want?" "An alliance," Cale said. "The Veil used a curse on Eldon Hollow. We broke it, but they'll strike back. Help us, and we'll stand against them together." Sorin considered, her gaze shifting to Erwin. "A human with you? Bold. The Veil's power grows. I'll aid you, but my price is their leader's end, Varys' second, Lord Tavian." "Done," Cale said. They returned with Sorin's promise, her warriors joining Eldon Hollow's defenses. Weeks later, the Crimson Veil attacked, led by Tavian, a broad vampire with a scarred face. The battle was fierce, but Cale and Sorin's combined strength with Erwin's tactics turned the tide. Cale faced Tavian, his white hair wild, and with a final strike ended him. The Veil retreated, their power broken. The echoes of the battle with the Crimson Veil lingered in Eldon Hollow, a reminder of the fragile peace they had won. The village stood stronger now, its new wooden fence standing tall under the gray sky, and the people moved with a newfound purpose. Erwin walked the streets each morning, checking on repairs and training sessions, her green eyes sharp with determination. Moraine followed her often, his small hands busy with tasks, his fear replaced by a quiet strength. Kel Draven remained a steady presence, his white hair gleaming in the weak sunlight, his red eyes scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. Lady Soren and her Silver Dawn warriors had stayed, setting up a small camp outside the village. Their silver-marked cloaks fluttered in the wind, a stark contrast to the earthy tones of Eldon Hollow. Soren, with her calm gray eyes and commanding air, worked closely with Chaol, planning defenses and sharing knowledge of the Crimson Veil's tactics. The alliance was uneasy, but held, forged in the heat of their last fight. One afternoon, as Erwin helped Tilda mend a fence, a messenger from the Silver Dawn approached. He was a young vampire, his face pale but eager, his cloak marked with silver. "Lady Soren requests your presence," he said, bowing slightly. "There's news." Erwin and Chaol followed him to the camp, where Soren stood by a fire, a map spread on a table. Her black hair was tied back, her expression serious. "Scouts report movement," she said, pointing to the map. "The Crimson Veil is gathering north of here, near Blackridge Pass. Lord Tavian's death has angered them, and they've named a new leader, Lady Neris. She's ruthless, stronger than Varys Chaol's jaw tightened. Neris was always ambitious. She'll want revenge and control. How many are with her?" 50 at least, Soren replied. "They're planning a full assault, not just on us, but on other lands tied to the Silver Dawn." "We need to strike first," Erwin frowned. 50? We can't fight that many. We don't have to," Chaol said. "We hit their camp, take out Neris. Without her, they'll scatter. But we'll need a plan." Soren nodded. "I'll send a small force to distract them. You and Erwin can infiltrate. Neris trusts few. Get close, and we end this." The next night, under a moonless sky, they set out. Chaol led, his white hair hidden under a dark hood, his red eyes cutting through the dark. Erwin followed, her knife at her side, her heart pounding with the weight of the task. Soren's warriors moved ahead, their silver cloaks blending with the shadows, drawing the Veil's attention with feigned attacks. They reached Blackridge Pass, a narrow valley flanked by steep cliffs. The Crimson Veil's camp glowed with torches, tents scattered across the ground. Neris stood at the center, a tall woman with red hair and black eyes, her presence commanding. Chaol and Erwin crept closer, using the rocks for cover. "Stay low," Chaol whispered. "We need to reach her tent." They moved silently, dodging patrols. Inside the tent, Neris studied a map, flanked by 2 guards. Chaol signaled Erwin to wait, then slipped in, his speed a blur. He took down one guard with a swift strike, but the second shouted, alerting Neris. She turned, her black eyes narrowing. "Draven, you dare!" Chaol drew his sword. "This ends. Neris!" The fight was fast. Neris was strong, her claws raking Chaol's arm, drawing blood. Erwin rushed in, throwing her knife at a guard, then tackled the second. Chaol and Neris clashed, their blades ringing. Erwin grabbed a fallen sword, joining the fray. With a coordinated strike, she distracted Neris, and Chaol drove his blade through her heart. She fell, her dust scattering, and the camp fell into chaos. Soren's warriors charged, scattering the Veil. The survivors fled, their leadership gone. Chaol and Erwin emerged, bloodied but alive, meeting Soren at the pass. "It's over," Soren said, her voice steady. "For now." They returned to Eldon Hollow, the village welcoming them with cheers. Thrain raised a cup, toasting their victory. Chaol and Erwin sat together, his white hair streaked with dirt, her hands still gripping her knife. "You fought well," Chaol said, his red eyes warm. "So did you," she replied. "We make a good team." Days later, Soren prepared to leave, her alliance with Chaol solid. "Call if you need us," she said. "The Veil will rise again, but weaker." As she departed, Erwin and Chaol walked the village, planning its future. The bond between them deepened. a mix of trust and something more. One night, by the fire, Erwin asked, "What now? Will you stay?" Kyle looked at her, his white hair glowing in the flames. "As long as you need me. This is my home now." But in the distance, a faint glow pulsed in the forest, a sign that shadows might return, and their fight was far from over. The faint glow in the forest pulsed like a heartbeat, a silent warning that hung over Eldon Hollow as the village settled into its hard-won peace. Erwin stood on the newly built wall, her green eyes fixed on the trees, the cool night air brushing against her face. Kel Draven joined her, his white hair catching the moonlight, his red eyes reflecting the distant light. The battle with the Blood Covenant had left scars, broken fences, bloodstains on the ground, but the people were alive, and that was enough for now. "What do you think it is?" Erwin asked, her voice low. Kale's gaze remained steady. Could be the last echo of the curse, or something new? The Crimson Veil's defeat might have stirred deeper powers. "We need to find out." Mirren climbed up beside them, his small frame determined. "I want to help." "It's my home, too." Erwin ruffled his hair. "You will, but you stay safe." "We'll need you here." The next morning, Kel and Erwin gathered a small group, Jorik, Tilda, and Thrain, to investigate. The village elders protested, but Erwin's resolve silenced them. They armed themselves with knives, torches, and a pouch of garlic from Kyle's supplies, then set out into the woods. The forest was quiet, too quiet, the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves absent. Kyle led, his white hair a beacon in the dim light, his steps silent on the mossy ground. They reached the cave where the first fiend had fallen, its entrance now wider, the air inside thick with a strange hum. Kale held up a hand, signaling them to stop. "Something's alive in there," he whispered. "Stay back." He ventured inside, his red eyes adjusting to the dark. Erwin followed, her knife ready, while the others waited at the entrance. The cave walls glistened with moisture, and at its heart lay a pool of black water, its surface rippling without wind. From it rose a figure, tall and shadowy, its form shifting between human and beast, its eyes a burning green. "Who disturbs my rest?" it hissed, its voice echoing off the stone. Kale stepped forward, his sword drawn. "I am Kale Draven. This land is under my protection. State your purpose." The figure laughed, a sound that chilled the air. "I am Zorak, guardian of the old pact. The fiends were mine, bound to feed the Crimson Veil. You broke that, and now I am free. This village will pay." Erwin's heart raced. "You took our girls for 100 years. We won't let you start again." Zorak's green eyes narrowed. "You cannot stop me. I am older than your vampire, stronger than your will." Kyle lunged, his blade striking the figure, but it dissolved into mist, reforming behind him. Erwin threw her torch, the flames catching the edge of the pool. Zorak snarled, retreating from the light. "You'll regret this," it spat, vanishing into the water. They stumbled back outside, the cave trembling as if angered. Thrain clutched his staff, his face pale. "What was that?" "A spirit," Kale said, wiping his sword. "Bound to the curse, freed when we destroyed the stone." "It's not dead, just hiding." Jorik spat on the ground. "So we fight a ghost now?" "We find a way," Erwin said. "Kale, you know magic. Can we trap it?" Kale nodded slowly. "With the right spell, yes. But I'll need help, someone stronger than Leora. There's a sage in the mountains, Arendor. He owes me a debt." The journey to the mountains took 3 days, the path steep and icy. Kale carried Erwin over the worst parts, his strength unwavering while the others struggled behind. They reached a cave high in the peaks, its entrance marked by glowing crystals. Inside, an old man with a long beard and bright blue eyes greeted them. Arendor. "Kale Draven," he said, his voice crackling. "You bring trouble again." "A spirit called Zorak," Kale explained, "freed from a curse. We need a binding spell." Arendor studied them, his gaze lingering on Erwin. "A human with you?" "Bold. The spell requires a sacrifice, blood from a living soul, willingly given." Erwin stepped forward. I'll do it. Kale's red eyes flashed. No, I'll give mine. She shook her head. You're our strength. I choose this. Arendor prepared a circle of runes, placing a crystal at its center. He chanted, cutting Erwin's arm, her blood dripping into the stone. Pain shot through her, but she held firm, her eyes on Kale. The crystal glowed, and a portal opened, revealing Zorak's shadowy form. Come forth, Arendor commanded. Zorak emerged, its green eyes blazing, but the spell held it. Kale and Arendor worked together, chanting and striking with blades infused with the crystal's light. Erwin, weakened, threw her knife, striking Zorak's chest. It roared, thrashing, then dissolved, sucked back into the portal, which closed with a flash. Erwin collapsed, but Kale caught her, his white hair brushing her face. You're brave beyond reason, he said softly. She managed a smile. For Eldin Hollow. They returned, Erwin recovering under Kale's care. The village celebrated, but a new threat loomed. Scouts reported movements, vampires and wolves again, this time from the east. Kale and Erwin prepared, their bond unbreakable. The final battle came under a blood-red moon. A new faction, the Shadow Pact, attacked, led by a vampire named Valthor, his black hair wild, his eyes silver. Kale faced him, his white hair a stark contrast, his sword clashing with Valthor's. Erwin led the villagers, their training paying off. With Sorin's return and the city soldiers, they pushed back. Kyle struck Valthor down, his blade piercing the heart. The Shadow Pact fled, their leader's dust settling. The village stood victorious, the curse's last echoes silenced. Erwin and Kale stood together, his white hair gleaming, her hand in his. We've won, she said. For now, Kale replied, but I'll stay, as long as you need me. The village thrived, their alliance a beacon. In the quiet, they knew peace was a gift, guarded by their strength and love.